Welcome everyone here at our council meeting here on January the 23rd, 2023. Appreciate you showing up here tonight as we conduct our county business. And let's move on down to our Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Carnes, would you introduce the young lady?
Yes, this is my granddaughter, oldest granddaughter, Brooklyn. She would be normally dressed to impress, but she just came from wrestling practice. She won third place in the state championships over the weekend.
Right.
And Indian Land came in second out of 51 teams, so we're very proud.
You want to have everybody, would everybody please rise, and when she finishes, Mr. Carnes will lead us in our invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for another day that you have given us. We thank you for the opportunity as members of council to represent the people of Lancaster County. We pray that you would give us wisdom and insight as we deliberate the items before us. Be with us and each person here in the audience as they go back home tonight. Watch over and protect us and keep us safe. For in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. We have Mr. Blackman is joining us on the telephone, so we will have roll call on any vote. So let's move on down to our approval of our agenda. I have a motion for
Motion to approve.
motion from Mr. Carnes. Who made the motion was Ms. McGriff, and second Mr. Carnes. Ms. Simpson, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Luis?
Yes.
Councilmember Graham? Councilmember McGriff?
Approved.
Mr. Mosteller?
Approve.
Chairman Harper?
Approve.
Vice Chair Karn?
Approved.
Alan Blackman?
Approve.
All right, let's move on now. We have a couple of special presentations this evening. Ms. McGriff, would you take care of the first one, please, ma'am?
I certainly will, Mr. Chair. At this time, I'd like to introduce to some and present to others Lancaster Promise Neighborhood Program Director, Shakura Francis. Shakura Francis comes to us from, I think, Charleston, who had been in this area before, and now will lead us in Lancaster in our Promise Neighborhood, with our Promise Neighborhood project. Mr. Shakura Francis.
Thank you, Councilwoman McGriff. Good evening, County Council. It is indeed an honor to see you all again. I know a few years ago I organized a prayer vigil downtown with Councilwoman McGriff's help and also your previous County Administrator, Steve Willis. And I remember Councilman Harper spoke, and he was very essential in helping make that a reality. I don't have much of a presentation. I really wanted to use this time to introduce myself. I look forward to developing a relationship with the County Council, with Lancaster Promise Neighborhood. We're so glad that Mr. Marstell is a member of our advisory board, and he has loaned us the nickel boom truck when we had our recent cleanup community work day in the Brooklyn area on December 3rd. We were excited that after 3 years, was the last time we had 170 volunteers showed up from all across Lancaster County to help us to clean up that neighborhood, and we'll continue to do so, and we appreciate the county's help in making that happen. For many of you and also the citizens who don't know much about Lancaster Promise Neighborhood, it is a 5-year, $25 million grant that was awarded to our community, the first community in the state of South Carolina, by the U.S. Department of Education. And we are moving into our second year in which we will have full implementation, bringing all of our programs up to speed as we strive to serve our community. I was in the news today, And I shared with the reporter some details about Lancaster Promise Neighborhood, and we know that this Promise Neighborhood serves census tracts 107 and 108, which is usually focused, most of it is in, well, really all of it is in Councilwoman McGriff's district, which is the most impoverished section of Lancaster County. We know that almost 68% of these residents live in poverty, and we have about 1,800 children who attend schools at Lancaster High, Rucker Middle School, and Clinton Elementary. And we have many programs that are currently up and running right now to really try to benefit these children and their families. One of them that I'm really excited about is the extended day program that is currently underway at all of the schools. I love to see it in action. And if you want to see it for yourself, it's Monday through Thursday after school until around, I believe, 6 or 7. You will see these kids doing things that I thought were really unimaginable when I started this job 60 days ago. I went around Christmas time and I saw elementary school children singing Merry Christmas in Spanish. That was just mind-blowing. I wasn't exposed to Spanish until I got to high school, and I can't speak a word of it. But nevertheless, at Lancaster Promise Neighborhood, we are preparing our children to compete and to thrive in a 21st century economy, which will really be bilingual. And we want to do everything that we can to put the tools of success in their hands, that these children could reach their God-given potential, whether they want to attend college or to seek a rich and a rewarding career. So Lancaster Promise Neighborhood is steadfast and moving to make this a reality. We have a new office space that is underway. We're going to be located right next to the United Way and the Father's Way, a place that is very familiar with our community. And we have painters working in there right now to try to get us up and running and have us in there by the 15th of February. And we look forward to inviting County Council to that space so you will know along with the public as to where we are, and also that we can continue to educate the public and also get their participation in what it is that we are doing in Lancaster Promise Neighborhood. I believe that's all I have this year. Are there any questions? I don't know if that works.
I don't have any.
You don't have any? Well, Councilwoman McGriff played a huge role in making this program a reality. So I think she knows more about Promise Neighborhood than anyone in this room.
All right, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Councilman Harper. And also, I do have some handouts that I would like to share with the County Council and with my business card as well, so that you all can certainly stay in touch with me, and I will be in touch with you. I know that many of you received my Christmas card, as Larry Honeycutt shared with me. And so we'll continue to build on that relationship so that we can partner and serve together. Thank you.
There's Ms. Simpson, she'll take them. All right, let's move on down to our second presentation. We have an update on the road projects that were approved and completed over the last 5 years, plus future projects. Mr. Jeff Cato.
And Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Cato gets up here, I want to take a few seconds to tee this up a little bit. There's been a lot of conversation in the community among the CTC members, and Jeff will highlight that body as we go through funding, but really talking about what is the impact of growth on our infrastructure, with roads being one. And so we want to take the time tonight to really highlight what has been done in the community. And you'll see there's a map right in front of us tonight. There's some maps in the council materials as well that highlights by funding source that Jeff will go through. But really what you see in front of you is the overall work that has been done. And so we've got a great story to tell. But part of it is it's taken a lot of sources. The state's been fortunate to have some excess funds that we've been able to get through CTC as well as other areas of the state. And so when people say growth, infrastructure, we hear you. And so that's going to be part of the comments tonight, is that we all understand we aren't necessarily keeping up with growth, but I think people will be impressed with some of the information they hear tonight. So I'll let Jeff get to it.
Can we turn the map around so everybody in the audience can see it? Because I think we've got it in the presentation.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of council. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. And what we have for you tonight is a update presentation on some roadway work. And we're going to go back kind of around the 2018 area when it started, but we're going to go back a little bit before that because, like some of you, I was also here then. In 2013, around that time, we had gotten some roads on a capital sales tax 2. Divided them into different areas, a bonded set of roads and then a pay-go set of roads. So this presentation deals mostly with the capital sales tax 2 pay-go roads, but in going into that, we remember back then when capital sales 2 was beginning and the road selections we had on it, we said, you know, by the time we're done with this, you're going to be able to drive around Lancaster County and hopefully hit somewhere where a road has been improved. That was the goal then. And since then, also some extra state funding from our gas tax managed by the CTC has had some extra money a few times in there, and they've been real aggressive in getting that funding out on the street and completed very quickly. So it's been a lot the last few years, so we're just going to kind of run through some of it and kind of lead to maybe what the future, we feel like the future holds. So one thing we get asked a lot is, what is the plan? What is the county's plan for the roads? What are we going to do? So a road plan is kind of what a lot of people like to hear, but it's also kind of very complicated to get it in extent. So the public works road plan would be, you know, our basic road maintenance, which is mostly handled in-house, and then road projects such as capital sales 2, and then a proviso for capital sales tax, and then pavement preservation. Those are all contracted projects that the county oversees, sometimes solely, but when they're DOT roads, we work jointly with the DOT and act as a liaison. And then what is going to be the future, and how does that all tie together into kind of, say, the county's master road plan? So it is with capital sales tax 2, and again, this is a presentation. It's, you know, some of the contracts are just finishing up, so the dollar amount may be a little bit off. Some of the roads are DOT roads, so they have 2 numbers, but it's approximately 40 roads and about 42 miles of roadway with a total of about $16.3 million invested and spent to date. And to date, we are almost 100% complete with capital sales 2. Like I said, the only thing left is maybe some punch list items, some retainage, some grassing, things of that nature. So that was a pretty lengthy project there, and like I said, with the road split, some were bonded right off the bat, which I remember. I mean, the priority at that time that was set was Henry Harris Road. And hold that thought, because at the time when we did capital sales 2 beginning, Henry Harris Road, it was the biggest thing was to get out there and resurface it. It was in pretty bad condition. I'm going to tie into possibly the future now. And then we had some CTC projects. They were able to, through this time frame, get about 3 rounds of extra one-time money. They're one of 4 counties that actually got that money bid out, projects done. Most of that was on those was, you have to spend that on the state system, so that was on DOT roads, which again, y'all's phone rings just like mine does. When there's a pothole, people don't care if a state road, county road, or whatever, they just want to see it fixed. So that was good injection there. About 27 miles and about 7.8 million with the latest, and again, we capped off this completion date at 2024, so CTC just got some additional one-time money just late last year, and we've already got some of that out, you know, ready to bid. But you're looking at, again, to explain later, some of those projects may go into 2025. It's just the nature of the road business right now. And then there's a map inserted in your packet with identifying what roads were completed in this on those 2 projects. And then we had something, proviso going into capital sales 3. We have 20-plus road, which includes some subdivisions that needed rehabilitation, approximately 17 miles of road. Now, many of those are still in design or ongoing, a little bit bigger projects than we're used to taking on ourselves, including Regent Parkway, which we know is in dire need of rehabilitation. And then down in Kershaw, Cleveland Street, which requires a lot of design and coordination with the railroad and DOT and some drainage easements down there. So that project's going to be a challenge, but Design phase is underway on those. And that is budgeted not to exceed $9 million. That was the budget for that proviso. And then there's a map of the area of where that work is taking place or will take place. And then two, the county also, we have a funding mechanism, our road fee, and it's established to assist all areas of the county in road maintenance. And recent state legislation was passed to solidify county road fee usage. Ours is set at $40 per vehicle and then generating an estimated $3.12 million. And in the last 5 years, we had proposed in 2 separate budget years increases on that fee to bring it to $40, and that generates an additional $800,000 or so for years for something, again, looking at the future, some preservation type projects rather than just all rehabilitation, and some signage. Some of the signage we were able to complete on some of the overhead intersections as you go up 521. We have some nice lighted signs on some of those poles now. We also, on some of our thoroughfares like 521 and 9, we were able to put up a little bit fancier, nicer, more visible type street signs, which again, that's something in the future people need to see and identify where to turn off these roads.
Mr. Cato, could you explain for the audience what the difference is between rehabilitation and preservation?
Yes, sir, Councilman Carnes. Rehabilitation is simply, the road is got some base problems. So basically what you're doing is what we do and the DOT does is a full depth reclamation, which means you go in, you grind up the road and the subbase, you mix in a strengthening agent, usually soil cement, and then as that cures, it gets a seal coat on it to ride on for a little while, then the road is paved. A preservation is where you can come in and try to preserve what you have, not just pavement. We consider our calcium chloride treatment on our gravel roads somewhat of a preservation because it's difficult to upgrade some of those roads to paved status, though we do entertain that with our CTC and capital sales projects as well. So a preservation is more something to seal the cracks or, make it a little more level, this, that, or the other, or preserve what's there rather than going in and doing the rehabilitation. And some examples of that, one of our first preservations was Glen Laurel subdivision up off Calvin Hall Road. That was a preservation. And then you come down to Shiloh Unity Road, that was a full depth rehabilitation. Most of our roads, unfortunately, after, like I said, one of our big focuses is infrastructure, and everyone's is too. Most of our roads, DOT and county, are almost beyond the point of preservation, so that's why we try to get in there. And there are some candidates we have that are so borderline, you need to go in there and take a soil sample just to see. We don't want to use preservation and it have underlying problems, because then the preservation's not going to preserve much of anything. So again, we're looking at many options to rehabilitation, basically. Anything out there rather than going the full depth reclamation, which will run you anywhere from $450,000 to $500,000 a mile to do, to some types of preservation. And staff and our engineering consultants, we're tweaking those designs to make sure as we move forward with this that we are getting the product that we want. And then by 2023, we should have about 44 roads, most of them in about 7 developments, approximately 8.22 miles to be preserved. And that total cost is running about $2.4 million, as opposed to almost the same amount of mileage under a rehab would be somewhere around $8.6 million. And there's again, another map in your packet showing the areas where the preservation's been taking place or scheduled to take place. Okay, so we kind of reached the end of that projection of where we're at right now. And again, when you add all that up, with both of these funds and then the preservation, we've improved in the last 5 years about 94 plus miles of road. That doesn't include any projects that were solely funded by DOT or other federal funding or something like that. This was either capital sales money, county road feed money, or CTC gas tax money. So we got about 94 plus miles approved Estimated cost in this time frame around $35.5 million. And again, when you take a look at that, and it's like what we said, and you look at this map here, it looks like maybe we got a paintbrush and just did like that, and the specks flew on it there. So you're seeing some. Hopefully, when we come back on another 5-year presentation, that map looks a lot more roads done on it. So we got a lot of stuff out there. There are a lot of needs out there, a lot of priorities out there. Just got to find a way to get to it. So with that being said, we got 94 miles done in 5 years. Where does that lead us to keep going? And again, one thing we always hear, growth will dictate the need for future services. There's no denying it. There's no hiding from it. It's here. It's going to happen. And then staff, we're currently working on traffic improvements such as roundabout, widenings, turn lanes, and not just, public works staff is helping, our development services department. We're looking at that now instead of reaction. They're trying to look at that now. And I guess maybe the best answer to that is how much of this stuff can the development pay for? So that's something we do that in-house internally with plan review. Lancaster County, and working with emergency services, recently adopted a traffic calming policy for its county-maintained roads. And again, that's even after some of those roads you see on that list were resurfaced. The next calls we were getting the next day is, man, why did y'all do that? Now they're speeding down our roads. So rather than the rule of thumb is not having traffic calming, we have it now, but it has to go through a policy which is relatively new. It was approved before COVID, but then COVID kind of came in and slowed it down. So we've really seen in the last 2 years pickups for requests to look at some areas for some traffic calming.
We had traffic calming before. It was called potholes.
Yes. That is correct. Okay, in addition to that, future county roadways project will incorporate more designs, nicer designs for traffic and pedestrians and things of that nature. Lancaster County, again, a little part of the Public Works part of our plan is we work with RFATS, COG, Development Services, as well as our emergency services folks, and we're looking at future widening of 521, and we partner, again, SCDOT. A lot of the road frontage is their roads. They have 900 miles in the county. We have about 400. So the bulk of the roads in this county are DOT maintained. So we work very closely with them, and we try to partner with them and try to stretch the dollar as far as we can, and that's worked very good. Compliment out to the SCDOT for all of their assistance and cooperation with us. It's not always easy, but we do try to find a way to do that, and we're always looking for ways to partner with them. And then, again, with the future, one of the things Lancaster County we've been talking about, for an example, is such as, like I said, in 2013, we were talking about we need to resurface Henry Harris Road. Now that it's been, paved and rehabilitated, we need to think about widening that road as an outlet for traffic off of 521. So again, get the folks that are involved, DOT, RFATS, what have you, find a way to do that, find a way to fund it. That would be ideal. Same thing for Harrisburg Road. I mean, all the developments coming in and off it's going to be a crowded road. If it's not already, I go up it myself from time to time. It gets kind of crowded up there. So, and then again, with SCDOT road frontage becoming rapidly more limited, Lancaster County, we need to look into conforming our county-maintained roads into acceptable connecting points. And again, you will hear more about that. You've heard about it some last year. We're going to bring it back to you too. The development's going to start wanting to connect to or come off of county-maintained roads. And you all know our biggest problem is they're usually under-designed or they don't have any right-of-way. We have to find a way to, if we're going to have development off those roads, don't wait till something's built and making a problem worse. Find a way to start to correct the problem. And then again, too, it may entice more smart growth off these roads, but again, we work well with our development services folks at looking at that. And again, staff will need to research and council will need to consider future funding. As we close, there's my sales pitch. One thing too, and it's fallen off because, of the last 2 years, you had approved budgeting for a true road inventory. We haven't had one since 2010. We will ask again this year in the budget to kick that off because of the last few years, mostly due to, COVID and things like that. We did not pursue that, so we will be looking for that again. And what we'd like to get is a good, like I said, this GIS stuff that made the maps for us, that kind of stuff, it's amazing what you can do with that. As I remember, our last inventory is just about 8 books about this thick with, how long the road is, this, that, and the other. So we would like a good inventory, and that way that could help use as a tool, not just for us, but future capital projects. CTC could use it. So we really need to revamp and get a new inventory. And also, too, like I said, capital sales 2, the proviso, capital sales 3, a lot of funding in roads, but it will run out. CTC, a lot of extra funding. It will run out, and even though the gas tax has been raised, more money's coming in. But when you're getting, like I said, $500,000 a mile, that money goes pretty quick, especially, too, when you start to, widen and do things like that. Some examples of, things like that. We're not used to seeing things like that in our county, but it's coming. It could enhance. The roundabouts are proven to help with traffic. We have, hopefully going to have a couple of those planned on our Regent Parkway project to help with that. We're looking at those methods, the widened lanes there, and then that was my best shot at finding a highway like 521 that wasn't jammed with traffic. So I was thinking maybe if we could get it all to flow like that through there one day, we would be doing all right.
Mr. Cato, can I interrupt you a second? We need to get Mr. Blackman back on the line. He actually had a drop-off or something. And while we're doing that, Mr. Cato, can you, when we come back here in a second, give us a little bit more background on the CTC, kind of the definition and the structure, since we talked a lot about?
Yes.
So give us 1 second here.
We can do that. The CTC is the Transportation Committee. County Transportation Committee. They oversee, it's a self-administered body appointed by the delegation, and they actually do the selecting. Staff, DOT, county staff, we give them all the information when we have questions about getting a road, and then they actually go through it and make an informed decision. So they don't necessarily, again, pick the roads, but they approve the funding. And we have an excellent transportation committee, in my opinion. They've been very aggressive at getting this money out on the street. They, try to go to where the needs are. And like I said, 25% of that money you have to spend on the state system. They've exceeded that since before this started because, like I said, it's the needs are the needs. It doesn't matter if it's a state road or a county road. Somebody's got to fix it. And giving you a idea or two of working with the CTC, if the CTC had not gotten involved and we hadn't worked partnerships, odds are half of Shiloh Unity, Possum Holler, and J.B. Denton Road, which were 3 pretty good-sized projects in Mount Carmel, they would still be sitting on the list somewhere because, DOT has their own priority list. So being able to use the Transportation Committee and shift funding to that is enabled to get other projects done. And like I said, it leads to more partnerships and things with the DOT.
Mr. Chair,
Lead, Ms. Miller.
well, it's time for questions.
Well, yes, it is, but I would say just one question. If you have a particular project and you're going to say, when is it going to be done? That's going to be the clincher because we were able to roll through 2020 and 2021 fairly easy. 2022 was very difficult. Our county administered projects, the ones for CTC and capital sales, we didn't get started till mid-August. And for paving season, that's terrible. But it was for, workforce problems, deliveries on Portland cement has been probably the biggest thing. But it's not just local area or statewide, it's pretty much nationwide. That has caused a lot of roadway projects to go slower. Some of our proviso roads that we got bid right after we passed that, they're out on contract, but it's just, again, the delays at getting someone in to do them, and most of it is because of deliveries or problems in the workforce. So if you have a when is this road
No,
going to get done?
I don't have a when.
I'll do my best to answer it, but I can't.
Well, I'm sure you
Yes, ma'am.
can, Jeff. You've always been able to answer my questions, but I want to thank you for a great presentation and also explaining what the CTC does and that we as council members don't approve roads. And I think folks get that confused because they'll call me and say, can you have this road paved?
Yes,
I can
ma'am.
only put it on a list or give it to you or give it to the committee. So I just want folks to understand, we don't make that decision.
Okay, I'll give you a simplest answer as I can on that, and I've worked elsewhere as well. Lancaster County is a self-administered transportation committee, which means the members are appointed by the delegation, and you folks may or may not know who they are. Lancaster County does have 7 members. They currently have 1 vacancy, but with the CTC, you don't have to go by the district. So they all kind of work together and try and look at the county as a whole. But you are correct. And like I said, the simple term for it is having it structured this way keeps the politics out of it as best as you can. I think that may be the answer you were looking for.
Yeah, and also, you mentioned that 25% of the funds have to be spent on state system?
Yes, ma'am. That's of your gas tax funding, your
Yeah.
CTC funding.
Well, my concern is, most of my district is in the city, and all of those roads are state roads. So it's very hard to get those roads within the city to get paved. I know we do a few here and there, but those roads within the city are terrible. And as many as we can get on that list, I would surely appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, and also too, with that, with the cities and even our other municipalities, we do work with them as best we can, and CTC does as well, because again, you got to look at a lot of those things, even on our more rural roads. You don't want to come in and pave a road that's getting ready to have a sewer or water line upgrade, so we kind of try to work all that into it as well. Or if you're going to, they're going to select this road, maybe the utility owner helps upgrade some of the water and sewer, because that's, I've done that before, and we're almost at that point now. We don't want to select a road that's due for a major utility upgrade going right down the middle. That's doesn't happen. But to get back to the CTC and finish up on that, yes, they do a great job, and they're truly self-administered. There are a few counties that are also self-administered, but their county council serves at the CTC, and meeting with them, even the council members come and say, I wish we had a true self-administered, citizen-led CTC, because it seems to help things flow a little bit better.
I got a question. You said the CTC doesn't pick the roads, but they approve the funding. If they don't pick the roads, who picks the roads?
We staff, DOT and county staff, we present what we have. It could be, something we've had on our radar. It could be something DOT has on their radar. Like I said, some of them, DOT does have a priority ranking system. The county does too, but ours is, more for the rural. And our charge when we started was, let's get folks out of the mud, let's pave gravel roads, which is still something we have to look at, as well as everything with the growth. That's the challenge for us. But those roads are presented to them, and that, at the end of the day, that's what they approve is the funding. The roads come to them via the public meetings and staffs of both the DOT, Lancaster County, some of the municipalities, or just maybe someone called them and said, hey, can you look at my road? So that's kind of how they go through.
So you tell me the squeaky wheel gets the road?
No, I'm telling you, it's the best. The best part I've been in Lancaster County is it's tries to stay out of that as much as possible.
So the roads are surveyed once they're put on the list, or once they're chosen. Do we survey those roads to make sure?
If we get an inquiry, like I said, we're the liaison, Lancaster County. If we get an interest on a road, we will check it out and report it, to the CTC, or we may, like I said, sometimes we make the statement. A lot of times they'll say, well, how many houses are on the road? that's all good and fine, but, you know, our job as the county, as we like to say, if there's one house or 100 houses, it's still a county maintained. It needs to be, and that's the assessment we make. We use the consultants, we'll use this, Councilman Graham, we'll use this inventory to rate both our paved and non-paved roads. Then we'll have a true third party saying, well, this road's worse than this one. You know, like I said, I don't know why. Another example is Possum Holler. I mean, Possum Holler would still be sitting there if the CTC hadn't have selected it. And it wasn't because it had a poor ranking, because everyone knows the road was in terrible shape.
Jeff, I'd like to thank you and your staff and the CTC for what y'all do for Lancaster County. Really do. Thank you.
Mr. Cato, I'd like to thank you as well. I have a couple of questions. On the punch list that you were talking about, how soon are those items kind of rectified or cleared up, and how are you tracking those?
Well, on the punch list items on contracts we currently did, you know, we hold retainage, so we won't make that final payment until we do a satisfactory walkthrough with either us or the third-party inspector we've hired. And then again, some of that punch list, I'm probably pretty sure what you're referring to. You got to have temperatures, and the weather just hasn't been cooperative to get people out right now. But yes, we'll move on those as quick as we can.
And then the second question that I had is, you had mentioned in particular Harrisburg Road and all the development that has happened in that area, creating a demand for road improvements and fixing the road there. Does it seem to you like maybe we should have the road fixed first before we have the developments in place? Seems like we're doing things a little backwards.
Well, yeah, and that's why we kind of brought this up. Like I said, Harrisburg Road, you know, we check with DOT to see what any plans they may have on it, because it is a DOT road. But we were just saying from the staff point of view, we've seen it, and we would offer any help or assistance that we could in that. But like I said, at the end of the day, that's you know, to widen a road like that is very, very expensive, and it does take time. So yes, we realize we're behind, but we want to catch up fast.
But you know, all of those developments had a traffic impact analysis done on them. So why didn't the developer pay for the widening, or the state or whoever it was recommend that widening at that point, so that the developer pays for the widening as part of the condition to get rezoned?
That one's more out of the public works realm on there.
Maybe it is. I understand that, but that's my frustration. The same with Henry Harris. Why is the traffic impact analysis not indicating that these roads need to be widened and the developers ought to share the cost?
Well, I say there is road improvements that are made by the developer, such as a turn lane or whatever it may be. So there is some road enhancements with some of the projects, but you're right, the factor for the entire length of it, how do you assess what portion a development contributes 1 mile down the road, 2 miles down the road, I think is the trickier part. But when we're talking about the development agreements or other things with developers, you have seen developer contributions for their immediate impact for turn lanes specifically is generally the way. But now you'll see there is a longer look where we are having developers do roundabouts that is maybe adjacent or down from their development, but even in looking at intersections within a quarter mile of the development. So there is some work being done on that.
Well, in my opinion, there needs to be a lot more, and they ought to be looking, because all you're doing is dumping traffic on 521 that can't handle it, and the developers that are causing that ought to share in the cost. I'm not saying one developer paid, but there ought to be a mechanism for all the developers to contribute and pay that cost.
I agree with Chairman Graham. I mean, I think it's a concern that we have, and I think we control some of that with the rezonings that we approve.
Mr. Blackman, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good job, Jeff.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Cato. All right. Let's move on down to our citizens' comments. Please bear in mind, this is not a period of dialogue with council or a question and answer period. This is your opportunity to address council of your concerns. Ask that you address your remarks to council as a body and not to any individual council member. Please speak into the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to address council. Your time will not start until you have provided your name and address. All right, first we have Bernadette Zatelli. I apologize.
Hello, my name is Bernadette Zatelli. I live at 1972 Hollybrook Lane in the Eastway subdivision in Lancaster. I moved into my home on a 2-acre lot in May after the public hearing rezoning meetings for RZ 2022-0175 Gabriel John Hardy north of 9 subdivision. I found out about the rezoning of 38.92 acres from low to medium density this past October, and I was not happy. That is why I'm here today, to express my and my neighbors' disappointment and dissatisfaction with this decision and to oppose the traffic impact analysis. I've spoken with numerous homeowners regarding the rezoning, and not one person knew about the public hearings in April and May last year. Eastway is a small community and not an HOA. All of the homeowners own a 1+ acre lot, and the majority of them did not want 38.92 acres rezoned to medium density. I've read the 23-page traffic impact analysis prepared for Gabriel John Hardy dated June 13th, 2022, and by going door to door and word of mouth, I and a few other homeowners notified our neighbors in Eastway of the rezoning and TIA. I have a petition here signed by 115 people who are opposed to a road connecting the north of 79 single-family home subdivision to Hollybrook Lane with an exit onto Eastway Drive to Highway 9. Contrary to pages 1 and 3 of the TIA, there are site distance issues on Hollybrook Lane. Contrary to page 6 of the TIA, from Burnett Street driving to Hollybrook Lane, there is a posted speed limit of 10 miles per hour. Per the TIA on pages 1, 3, and 11, the north of 9 subdivision is anticipated to generate 837 daily trips. These cars will be driving through our quiet community where people walk, ride bikes, drive golf carts, and ladies even ride horses in the streets. Contrary to TIA, entering or exiting Eastway Drive in either direction onto Highway 9 is extremely dangerous, as there are site distance issues and there have been accidents by jacks on Highway 9. My neighbors, many who are senior citizens, have lived in Eastway for years and feel connecting north of 9 subdivision to Hollybrook Lane and Cato Road will affect their quality of life, erode the streets, and lower their property values. I encourage all of you to read the traffic impact analysis and go to Eastway Drive and up and down Hollybrook Lane, Cato Road, and through the Eastway subdivision. You will find that we're a growing community with site distance issues, hilly, narrow, and winding roads. We propose that north of 9 subdivision not connect a road at the bottom of Hollybrook Lane and that the 2 subdivisions remain totally separate. We propose that north of 9 subdivision have 2 separate exits and entrances directly onto Highway 9 where there are no site distance issues. And contrary to page 6 of the TIA, the speed limit on Highway 9 is 45 miles per hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Meakin.
My name is Bill Meakin. I live at 1972 Hollybrook Lane. I am here with concerns about the North of 9 subdivision. The traffic impact analysis that was done is flawed. It states no line of sight issues, 35 miles an hour on Hollybrook Lane. Hollybrook Lane has a tight S-curve, a posted 10-mile-an-hour speed limit sign in one area. Another section has a tight 90-degree turn with no line of sight. Another section has a curve and side road intersection. The road also has a blind hill crest. Eastway Drive turning onto Pageland Highway 9 is a dangerous intersection now with the amount of traffic that is in the area currently, and adding more traffic from this development is a disaster waiting to happen. These roads, Eastway, Hollybrook, and Burnett, were never designed for the amount of traffic that this development will generate. To use Hollybrook Lane as a road into and out of development is a mistake that will have disastrous consequences. EMS, police, fire will be delayed in their responses times to emergencies. I believe that the builder should have direct access to Highway 9, Pageland Highway. Their plan shows land right up to 9 that could be used for an entrance and exit. This development will add hundreds of auto trips 2 times a day, plus post office, UPS, FedEx, Amazon, and all the other deliveries to roads that were never designed to accommodate this much traffic. I am asking you to actually go and drive on these roads to actually see the situation. The only benefit from this development is to the builder's bank account. At the council meeting last week on the 17th, I heard some of the UDO plan recommendations being suggested going forward. Many of these recommendations for roads and housing developments are the same concerns that we have about this development, north of 9, using Hollybrook Lane. We are opposed to this development. No one was aware of this development in the planning, not even the person with property adjacent to the proposed road onto Hollybrook Lane connection. We're against using Hollybrook Lane for north of 9 development. It does not fit the aesthetics of the surrounding area of this development. It will have a negative effect on property values of current homeowners. It will lower the quality of life going from peaceful, quiet, safe street to a dangerous, noisy intersection. Just because there is land doesn't mean that we need to put in large developments like this if the infrastructure cannot properly handle it. Please do not let the builder use Hollybrook Lane. You were appointed to serve for the good of the people and the public and the community. This project does not help or provide any benefits to the community. It does just the opposite. And the previous speaker talking about the roads and the money being spent, that is exactly what we're talking about here. The roads were never designed for this kind of traffic. It was going to generate. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
You have a copy of this development, this horrendous development you want to put in. Thank you.
Jerry King.
Hi, good evening, members of council and council clerk. I'm also here to speak regarding the North of 9 development and the opposition to it. My name is Jerry King. I live at 1933 Hollybrook Lane. Please refer to the 2 pages that I provided, one of a drone shot of our street and also one of a very recent accident. Most of you probably are not familiar with our area, so hopefully these pages will help. On the drone shot, you see I've noted there is a single lane unpaved road off to the left of Hollybrook just before the cul-de-sac, which will be developed in the future, in itself adding traffic going on to Hollybrook. The elimination of Hollybrook's cul-de-sac for the north of 9 development of 78 homes would add hundreds of additional vehicles traveling daily through our neighborhood. Most residents from the development will be heading north toward Indian Land and Charlotte, using our road as their exit and entrance route as compared to using Cato Road to the south, which is the other proposed access road into the development. This needs to be changed, leaving our cul-de-sac and instead filtering the traffic from the development directly on to Route 9. The second page I provided with the security camera shot of the white car in the driveway captured a truck and flatbed taking down the street and stop sign last week at the corner of Eastway Drive and Hollybrook Lane. The truck also deeply rutted the other side of the road, nearly missing the mailbox. It's an example of trucks coming in and out of our street for the construction of homes currently being built on Hollybrook. The damaging effect will increase more than tenfold if our street is extended, allowing them to come down our road for those 78 homes. Small children live at that intersection and in other homes on our street. And construction and log trucks coming down from the north, they don't come in off 9. They come in off Highway 9 bypass by AutoZone and come up Tombeck onto Hollybrook, affecting a large residential area, disrupting many of our residents. We ask that you please help us by not permitting the builder to use Hollybrook as an entrance into the proposed development, but to instead make the builder filter those residents and construction vehicles and Amazon and every other delivery truck directly out into Route 9. It would be a much safer entrance and exit for them as well. When you come out onto 9 from Eastway Drive, as stated before, there is a blind spot to the left as cars and trucks race up that hill. This blind spot would be eliminated for those drivers of the north of 9 development if an access street came directly out of 9 farther down. Your pages might not be real clear to view, but I've given the clerk a couple of photographs that are much clearer if you would care to look at that example. In any case, I really appreciate and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Ms. King. Richard Dole?
Yeah, my name is Richard Dole. My address is 3056 Drummond Avenue. I live in Indian Land. I'm just coming here for some general comments as we start this new, legislative section for the county. And I'd like to thank each member for their service to the people of Lancaster County. And even though we disagree sometimes, and I know we have in the past, I would like to still thank you for your efforts to make Lancaster County a better place to live and work. Secondly, I'd like to express my sincere hope that this council will work more effectively with the residents of Indian Land to address the issues that are unique to Indian Land. And I believe some of them just came up as Councilman Luis was addressing. And I would like to thank Brian, Councilman Carnes, for fixing Pothole Hollow, so we can now rename it appropriately Possum Hollow. And I do appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. Some of the issues to address this, some of the issues that this council will need to address, I think maybe would be a full-time service center in Indian Land, something where a county business can be done. Since approximately half of the county lives north of Highway 5, it would be nice to be able to pay my taxes there or other things. The need for a fully staffed, full-time sheriff's remote site. Right now, it's not staffed around the clock, and as the population increases, some of the residents in the area and our proximity to Charlotte have brought a lot of angst and anxiety to that matter. We'd like to maybe possibly talk to the sheriff about funding a full-time substation there. And thirdly, and lastly, the zoning issue. One of the things that I heard from the previous residents of Lancaster County is there's a lot of challenges with zoning and rezoning. And my question to this is, why do we have a UDO if we keep rezoning everything? Why do we do that? I don't understand. If we said that property particularly is zoned for a particular use and then we go and change it, then why do we just throw the UDO right out the window? What's it for? And we know with the Indian Land, as Mr. Graham spoke, Henry Harris Road is a mess, and the traffic on 521 needs to be addressed. So maybe it's time to look to the developer and say, hey, we need to let the roads catch up to the development. So a lot of us that live up there and work there, and I've been there 12 years now, and I'm sure Mr. Carnes has been a lot longer than myself, we realize that the growth has far outpaced our infrastructure. And so I hope we can work together as a community to slow down this growth and look more effectively at the traffic and the other infrastructure improvements that need to be made. And thank you for your time, and I appreciate your effort to help Lancaster County become a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dole. Jim Ferguson?
My name is Jim Ferguson. I live at 8380 Henry Harris Road, and I've been brought up a lot tonight. But I live on the county part of it between Shelley Mullis and Jim Wilson. We've got a new development going up across the street from where we live right now. Have no problem with growth. Have no problem with that whatsoever. But when growth affects people and that are not in the development, then we've got a problem there. We've called the county, the Lancaster County Water and Sewer Department out 3 different times. We called the guy from Columbia, which I guess is South Carolina Department of Transportation, up. We've got 2 culverts that come across the road, come across under Henry Harris Road, and we've put up with the water now for 15 years. Some of people behind me have put up with it longer than that. Water, we don't mind. We understand we're going to have water runoff on the road. We don't have a problem with that. But since the development started, we're getting mud, and nobody will do anything about it. I've gone back and looked at the plans along with my next door neighbor who was a builder. Our understanding was there was supposed to be a berm put up from Shelley Mullis down to where the development was going. The berm is up. The more they come from Shelley Mullis down Henry Harris south, they went up. We have a berm above Henry Harris that's 7 feet tall. The berm is supposed to be there, and then the houses are supposed to be built on the backside. These particular houses are going to be built on top of the berm. So you can imagine 7 feet wall on the other side of the road, how much water and how much mud we're getting. They've got the silk screening and everything up like it's supposed to be. But the culverts are dumping water. We've sent pictures to Lancaster County. One gentleman came out. He walked the area with us. He did everything we asked him to do as far as walking and concerned. He would get back with us. We've never heard anything. We've had another gentleman come from the Indian Land Division, and all he would do is stand on the side of the road. He won't walk the property with us where we can show him the mud. My next door neighbor built his house. He put a silk screen up that goes to the house that I live in front of. The mud comes and the water rushes so hard, it doesn't even affect it. My whole thing is, I'm all for the development. I have no problem at all, because the way they're going to build it, I told the builders when we met with them, as long as I still get my sunset, you can build anything you want to over there. I don't care, but don't take away my sunset. Well, these 7-foot berm with 7-foot in the houses on top of it instead of behind the berm is taken away, and it's causing tons of problems. We were told that the state put the culverts in. It's a county road. If they messed with it, they would have to take over the maintenance of the road, which I think the county does the maintenance anyhow, as far as I know. But we just need help, or somebody to come up and at least sit down and talk with us about all the mud we're getting on that side of the road. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Keith Millen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keith Miller. I live at 7138 Chrysanthemum Road in the Walnut Creek area. Me and my wife are new retirees in the area. My wife doing 30 years in the military, me 10 years and 30 years in law enforcement. Law enforcement, I sat right back there where that sheriff at, looking at council members. I learned to use the council member as a support system. Always use your support. I'm asking for support, guidance, anything about the huge erosion problem I got in my backyard. Just like the gentleman said back there, when it rains, it goes in my neighbor's yard, and I lose my backyard. I'm worried about that, and I just need some guidance. Like I said, we're new to the area. I don't know. I apologize not knowing who my city councilman is and the districts, but I just needed somebody to talk to or somebody to listen. I went to MI. I went to the HOA. Nobody's listening, and as it rains here, I'm losing my backyard. My neighbors getting mud. They put little rocks down. The rocks didn't do. We tried to put hay to stop the rush of water, and that's not working. I just need help. I just need somebody to talk to, somebody to come out and look at it, somebody to get with our zoning or housing. I don't know what to do. I tried to use my resources. You all my last resource. I just need help. I just need somebody to talk to and show me what to do. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken Bailey.
I'm Ken Bailey, 1812 Burnett Street, and I also wish to speak against opening access to Hollybrook Lane from the proposed north of 9 subdivision. One of the reasons my wife and I chose to buy our house in Eastover Estates back in 1989 was because Burnett Street was not a through street. The intersection of Hollybrook Lane and Burnett Street is the corner of our property. Not living on a through street assured us of minimal traffic past our house and a quieter neighborhood. We do not want more traffic passing through our neighborhood. Secondly, I am opposed to the small lot size in the North of 9 subdivision. This is not in keeping with the surrounding neighborhoods. Very few lots in the surrounding neighborhoods are less than 1 acre. Most appear to be 1.5 to 2 acres or larger. This makes for a quieter, friendlier place to live, and we'd like to keep it that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. That concludes our citizens' comments.
Mr. Chairman, we did have some others that were submitted online that the clerk would like to highlight for you.
All right, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and council members, we had 3 electronic submissions that are at your seats. Copies are at your seats. The first was from Robert Hager in Indian Land, South Carolina. He wrote about road infrastructure and that he felt like the county needed developers to pay for impact fees, that we needed plans to widen Highway 521, and that we should prioritize parks, greenways, and dog parks, and that the county was allowing too many apartments too close together. The second submission was from Dan Sadvary, who lives in Indian Land, South Carolina. He wrote about traffic congestion and that development needs better planning and the pace needs to be slow, that the county needs modern, creative concepts to implement at key intersections, including 160 and 521 and Marvin Road and 521, and that we need to help with traffic congestion. The third submission is from Ken Bailey, who I believe just spoke, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. Let's move on down to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E.
All right, I got a motion from Mr. Mostella, a second from Ms. McGriff. Roll call, please.
Approved.
Approve.
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 Approved.
Approve.
All right, let's go on down to our non-consent agenda. Item 8A, second reading of ordinance 2022-1831 regarding rezoning property located at 4263 Doby's Bridge Road in Indian Land, SC, for low-density residential, LDR, to institutional district, INS, to allow for a daycare facility. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion from Ms. McGriff. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Blackman. Mr. Burhans.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of council. This item was last on your agenda at the January 9th meeting, whereby council approved first reading of the rezoning ordinance to the institutional zoning district to help facilitate development of a daycare facility. During the discussion portions of this meeting, council seemed fairly unanimous that they wanted to, they would be more comfortable seeing a traffic impact study prior to issuing any kind of final ordinance reading for this rezoning, and provide instructions to the applicant to strongly consider that as they progress forward in this process. Since the January 9th meeting, the applicant has worked with their traffic engineer to develop a scoping for said study. The scoping has been approved by SCDOT as well as Lancaster County staff. One proviso on the scoping was to make sure that it studies all of the uses on the property. If you recall, it was going to have a daycare and an out parcel, so come up with some speculative use for the out parcel. But otherwise, county and DOT staff were comfortable. I received some communication late last week from the traffic engineer that he estimates the county will have the traffic study by early April, just based on the amount of time needed to collect traffic counts, undertake the analysis, and conclude other activities with the study. And we're estimating somewhere about 30 days of review time for SCDOT and county staff to review the study. And so I'm giving you this timeline because if council is comfortable moving forward with this rezoning, at least through second reading, we will need a date certain of when to schedule third reading and not be able to, forecast it out to some general period. So if council is comfortable moving forward with second reading with the idea that you want to see a TIA before you make third and final reading, I would advise that you schedule third reading for the June 12th meeting, which would give us plenty of time for any delays that can sometimes happen, or if the review gets a little protracted because there's issues that are uncovered. I think that would afford us sufficient time, whether issues come up on the traffic consulting traffic engineer side or on the review side. So I'll certainly make myself available for any questions, and I do believe the applicant is in the audience. Thank you.
Questions?
So you said that SCDOT approved it?
Scoping, yes, sir.
The scoping, what does that mean?
Sorry, I should have kicked off with that. So prior to a traffic engineer commissioning a traffic study, they approach DOT and the county with the parameters of said study. And those parameters include the intersections to be studied, any kind of traffic growth rates that are going to be used, and and the uses to be studied on the future uses of the property that will generate the traffic. So they're the basic building blocks for a traffic study before that engineer then engages in the detailed analysis. They want to make sure, hey, I got the parameters right before I start spinning my wheels on this time-consuming process. And so that's a required first step in any community where traffic studies are required.
So there'd be no discussion of turn lanes or any of that yet?
Well, that would come out with the analysis. So the analysis would have to determine what impacts this project creates on the existing road system, and then if there are impacts, what mitigation techniques should the applicant use to mitigate those impacts? And they'll come about as part of the analysis. And you will have that analysis before third and final reading is considered by the council.
Would anyone like to propose an amendment to the original motion to possibly delay it?
I mean, I'm not comfortable even doing the second reading without the traffic analysis and everything. I mean, that's my opinion. I hate to go to third reading and then turn it down. I mean, I think we should be doing that at second reading.
Well, would you like to make any kind of amendment?
My amendment would be to delay second reading until June the 12th.
Is that, you want to make an amendment?
I'll make that a motion.
All right, we have a motion for an amendment from Mr. Graham to delay the second reading until
June the 12th is when we get, when the traffic and,
June 12th.
What will happen to the motion on the floor?
This is just an amendment.
No, you're putting that in the form of a motion, right?
We have a motion for approval. So
We can't do the second reading if he's wanting to pull the second reading off the floor.
We just had to withdraw the original.
You have an amendment to push that second reading off. So that is trumping the motion that's on the floor at this point. If that motion succeeds, then your second reading is pushed off and the original motion on the floor is dead.
but there still has to be a second to my motion.
Yes, yes.
I second.
All right, we have a second from Mr. Mosteller. Any discussion?
Yeah, can I have a clarifying question on that scoping? So, Mr. Burhans, is that going to include the maximum use of that property for the full 5 acres?
Typically, so with this study, the scoping package came in to study a daycare, and then it will be up to the traffic engineer to propose a use for the other section of the property. I think medical office has been discussed as the likely future use. And so it'll be up to DOT and the county's traffic study reviewer to determine if that use is reasonable to use on that undefined tract. And so in the circumstance that, let's just say, daycare and medical office came in with the traffic study, and that's what was analyzed, and that's what moved forward with this process, and council rezoned it, and then 5 years from now, some different uses came up that had higher traffic generation. Well, it's very common that, county staff and DOT would call a timeout and saying, hey, well, we have this TIA that analyzed daycare and medical office. Now you want to do this other business type that's much higher. You need to go ahead and update your TIA with this new use and mitigation program.
Would that prevent them from building something that is by right under the zoning that we would approve?
It would be required to do before they could build anything by right. It would be part of that development process when they submitted plans.
But if they were doing the rezoning, why wouldn't you consider the most intense use on that extra parcel?
Well, again, this traffic study is coming out a little bit at an unusual time in the development process. Again, this study would ordinarily would come up when they have prepared civil construction plans. So we're doing this a little bit early, and so we are, the traffic study is being developed based on the likely future use of the property as represented by the applicant. They only hurt themselves if they decide to change course and swap out uses or whatnot to more intensive uses. They don't gain anything. It just, if that were the scenario to occur, we would call a timeout and have the study updated as well as any mitigation that came up about with that. But because the applicant from day one has come in and said, I want to build a daycare here, has developed conceptual plans based on that actually multiple conceptual plans based on that use, we feel it's prudent to use daycare as at least half of the use of that property. The other half will be, it'll be an examination of what's some of the more intense feasible uses of this property, and that will be studied on that vacant piece to the west.
So my concern and the concern that I have is if we rezone this property to INS, any future property owner could redevelop this site for a current by right approved use, correct?
That's correct. They could build anything that's permitted by the Unified Development Ordinance.
Which includes a hotel motel, which I mentioned at the last meeting. This site under INS would also allow for 50-foot height. So that's correct?
That's correct.
And the impact of the entire site, I think in the last meeting they had said it was unlikely for that to be built as a hotel motel because of the size. But if we look at the town hall suites over by Red Ventures, I believe that is in about 2 acres.
Okay.
So that concerns me, that the use could be significantly larger and more intense than what is anticipated right now. And I'm not saying that the developer is not anticipating those uses, but there could be a subsequent user that does that same thing.
All right. Mr. Blackman, would you like to comment?
Are we not debating whether or not to delay at this time? I mean, it looks like some of our discussion's gone back to the original motion.
Okay. Let me make sure I get this one right. This is fine. We're going to put you to work. So the original motion, you're satisfied it's dead. I don't have to.
It's not dead yet because you've got a motion and a second on the amendment. So we've got to see where that goes. And just, Mr. Chairman, for your information, your rules do require a 2/3 vote for a motion to postpone to a time definite, and that's what the amendment is at this moment.
Oh, you 2/3? I hadn't heard that one before.
So that's a total of
Not for that.
5, yes, sir.
All right,
let's finish. I would like for us to call for the vote on the amendment.
Let's go.
Any more discussion on
that? Could end the rest of this discussion until a later date if we so choose to do so.
All right, we've got an amendment on the floor for Mr. Graham to delay this second reading to June the 12th. All in favor, we got to have a roll call vote. I'm sorry. Ms. Simpson?
Jose Luis? Nay. Carrie Graham?
Yes.
Now, we are voting on the second motion, an amendment to approve the.
Yes, yes, ma'am, to postpone it to a later date.
Okay. Approve.
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 All right, I need to now, so
That means,
by a vote of 6-1, this second reading will be delayed until June the 12th.
That's correct.
Now, do I need to clear the original?
No, sir, it's dead by matter of this amendment, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. All right, and Mr. Burhans, we hate that you're going to move on. It's going to Cornelius, North Carolina, 1st of February, and we wish you well.
did they not tell you that we're not going to let you go?
We've asked the sheriff to handcuff you to your desk.
And so, Mr. Chairman, as you highlighted for the audience, Mr. Burhans has served for about 4 years as our Development Services Director, leading our planning effort. And so certainly this is his last meeting. He'll be with us for a few more days on staff. But definitely, Rox, you've had an impact in the community, so thank you. And definitely a consummate professional. And so you're leaving it in a better place. And again, thank you.
Again, thank you, Mr. Burhans. Let's go on down to 8B, our first reading of orders 2023-1838 regarding amending the fiscal year 22-23 budget. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion from Mr. Carnes.
Second.
Second from Ms. McGriff. Ms. Belk.
Mr. Chair, members of council, I have an amendment to the budget before you regarding construction of a new building for Camp Creek Fire. Back in September 2020, council passed a resolution which is attached in your agenda packets, just in case y'all wanted to see it. That designated approximately $22,000 from the sale of fire apparatus for this purpose. And it stated in the resolution that it would be formally approved by council via ordinance in the future. So that's what we're here to do tonight. Camp Creek Fire has recently completed their permitting process, so they would like the release of these funds.
All right. Any questions, Ms. Belk? Any discussion? Mr. Blackman, you good?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to call for the vote. Ms. Simpson?
Approve.
Approve.
Approved.
Approve.
Approved.
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 All right, we have unanimous approval. First reading of ordinance 2023-1838. Let's move on down to item 9, our discussion and action items. We have several appointments to various boards and commissions. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Ms. McGriff. A second from Mr. Graham. Could we have the vote, please?
Approve.
Approve.
Approved.
Approve.
Approve.
Approved.
Approved.
And we thank all these constituents and for their volunteer service here in the county. Mr. Marstall, anything else on miscellaneous reports or anything?
No, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. No.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
Last calendar year, as we were wrapping up, I had mentioned that I would like to see us amend the current UDO to alleviate the minimal parking standards, and we said we would bring that up when the new council took effect. I would like to see staff propose a write-up an ordinance that would eliminate that minimum parking so the council can vote on it and decide whether or not they agree with this idea.
All right, we will, we need to look at that with the committee of the whole meeting. We'll have it on the agenda this month, February. You satisfied with that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's move on down to executive session. Looking for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
To discuss, get some advice from attorney-client privilege regarding the status of pending litigations. I have a motion from Ms. McGriff and a second from Mr. Mostella. Roll call, please.
Approve.
Approved.
Approved.
Approve.
Steve Harper.
Approved.
Barnes.
Approved.
Approved?
All right, we have unanimous approval to go into executive session this evening, so we are now in executive session. I'd like to have a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Motion for Ms. McGriff to have a second.
Second.
Second from Mr. Graham. Let's have a roll call. All right, go ahead. All right, thank you, Mr. Pont. So we've been doing a roll call all night. Let's finish up.
Is Alan still on the call?
No, but I'd rather keep the method of voting the same the whole meeting.
Ready? Jose Luis?
Approve.
Terry Graham?
Approve.
Charlie McGriff?
Approved.
Billy Mosteller? Steve Harper?
Approve.
Brian Carnes?
Approved.
And Alan Blackman is absent.
So we have unanimous approval to come out of executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn at 7:55?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Luis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Carnes.
I was up to 2:30.
To be consistent, we will have a roll call one last time.
Jose Luis?
Approved.
Terry Graham?
Approve.
Charlie McGriff?
I might approve. Approve.
Billy Mosteller? Steve Harper?
Approve.
Brian Carnes?
Approved.
Alan Blackman is absent.
We have unanimous approval
And it's early.
to adjourn. This meeting is adjourned.
All righty. Don't know how to act, do we? Hey, Karen, wait a minute.